Hi, Joel Lindstrom here. One of my goals for this channel is to answer people's questions, the common questions that I get about the Power Platform, versus me just picking out random topics that I want to talk about. And from time to time, I may bring in some special guests, and these can be technical topics or non-technical topics. Today's topic comes from a question I saw on the Reddit Power Platform forum that I thought was really good from a Mr. Pinkletoes. I don't know who Mr. Pinkletoes is. Mr. Pinkletoes, can I call you Pink for short? Mr. Pinkletoes asks, other than Power Platform skills as a Power Platform developer, what other skills do you bring to the table? And I thought that was an excellent question because there's a lot of talk about how to be awesome with this, and this would really apply to any development technology, but specifically to low-code technology like Power Platform. What are the things, the non-technical, non-platform skills that are helpful to do your job? So I'm going to talk about what I see as 5 of the top Power Platform soft skills, or soft skills that developers should have, especially if you want to move forward in your career. This is not an exclusive list, but after doing this for 17 years, these are some of the things I've consistently seen that the people who are the most successful are good at. And so if you are starting out and you are getting good with the technology, what are some other things you might want to work on to move forward in your career? One is mastering business process discovery. You can be great at building stuff and developing stuff, but if you don't know how to connect that to real needs for business people, you're not going to be successful. Just because you're good with technology doesn't get you anywhere if you can't understand real needs people have and then design and translate that to an application and automation. Just being able to build is great, but being comfortable leading a business process discovery, understanding how to break an application down into smaller pieces and then design the right solutions for it, understanding and being a good listener to be able to listen to what people really are saying. Sometimes what they're asking for and what they really need are two different things. And then understanding what they need before solutioning it. Especially once you get good, it's easy to jump ahead in your mind and think you know better than they do. But you can have the most awesome application in the world you design, but if it doesn't meet anybody's needs, you're not going to be paid by someone to build that application. You might build it yourself. You might decide, hey, I want to build a solution and sell it to people. That's great, but it needs to meet somebody's needs, and being comfortable in leading a discussion, getting requirements, capturing them, and break them down into bite-sized chunks where you can then build them is critical. That's a good thing to know how to do, because anything you do beyond just being a developer, you're going to have to meet with customers either internally or externally, and you're going to need to be able to break down requirements in order to estimate them to build. The next thing I would say is sales and negotiation skills. This is something that I'm very thankful for the experience I had working for about a decade in sales before I moved into more of the technical side of the Power Platform. And this is something also that I've noticed a lot of people who come from more of a developer background aren't always comfortable doing. But even if you're not in a sales job, sales is life. So let's say you work internally for a company and you are a Power Platform developer for them. If you can't sell the idea that you have, then you're not going to get anywhere. If you can't come up with a business value of building this application, then you're not going to be able to build that application. As I mentioned before, people are not just going to pay you because you're awesome, but rather because you can deliver value by building applications and automations that meet real business needs. Every demo you do as a developer with Power Platform, or really other technologies, is a sales demo. Every negotiation you have over what's in scope, what's not in scope, that's all sales. So being able to understand the needs and break that down and then communicate that in a compelling manner and build a business justification about why we should maybe use premium licenses versus SharePoint. This is one area when I talk to people and they work for a company that's using Power Platform, but they're trying to do everything with SharePoint, it's because they're trying to save money. But if it meets a critical business need, if it has a large impact to the business, that's why people will pay north of $100 a month per user for Salesforce, for Dynamics, etc., because they can justify that based on the value they get. And if it's a critical business process like that, you need to have the confidence and the skill set to be able to create a business value justification and a return on investment or ROI for that. So a couple of recommendations. Now, this is one that I have a personal connection to. John Sterling, my old boss, wrote a book called Sales for Noobs. So kind of a quirky title, but that is a great introduction to sales, even if you're not in sales. And I post a link in the description here to where I appeared on his podcast and talked about how my experience working for him and what I learned about sales from him has helped me tremendously, even when I have not been in a sales role for about almost 20 years. Another one I'd recommend, and I'm having my team at work read this right now, is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. This is another great book that specifically about negotiation and moving beyond the getting to yes mindset and rather hearing people, really listening to them, mirroring them, and then getting consensus and moving forward and getting to that's right. If you are comfortable with selling and you're comfortable with negotiation, plus you're really good at building stuff, you're unstoppable. Public speaking, if you're the world's greatest developer and you're not comfortable talking to people, you're not going to be very successful, because to do the things we've talked about in the first two items, you have to be comfortable talking to people and getting up in front of people. And sometimes I'll interview people and on paper they look great because they know what they're talking about, they have great experience, but it scares them to death to speak up in a meeting. And that limits their capabilities. Now, I can speak from experience that I wasn't always comfortable doing that, but with practice and things like joining a Toastmasters club, investing in yourself in something like that will help you tremendously and give you confidence. The other thing is, it's not just the confidence to speak to people, it's the skill at being able to mirror their level, the way they talk, the cadence at which they talk, but very importantly for this industry, the technical proficiency and technical level at which they are. So if you're in a meeting and you're talking about the fields and the controls and the formulas with someone who's a business person, you're going to totally lose them. Or you might present it in a way that to you is very compelling. This is the best thing since insert whatever you think is great here. But to them, what they're looking for is what's the experience going to be? What's the benefits are going to be? So learning things like when you present, when you demo, not just talking about what it is, but translating it to here's the benefit you are going to get from this is an amazing skill set to have. And again, will make you unstoppable if you get really comfortable with that, because then you can handle the more hands-on customers, both internal and external. There's going to be people who are, you might say, high touch, and you need to be very compelling, persuasive in the way you communicate with them. And so early on in my career, I struggled with this because I would get too deep, too technical, and the sales guys would be kicking me under the table saying, shut up, Joel, and let the customer talk. And it's knowing how to talk, how to listen, how to tailor your message, how to emphasize the benefits, and really make a compelling case for why this is great, why it's going to be life-changing to them. Watch the way Microsoft or Apple or Google rolls out a new product, and you'll get a good example of how you present something to someone in a way that's compelling. So next, taking feedback. This is one that especially people that get really good and hear a lot of affirmation about you are the best developer ever, you're a wizard, you can do whatever, sometimes stink at taking feedback. And here's why this is important. People will think your baby is ugly. You build this application, you take the requirements, you build it, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, and then they hate it. They think it's terrible because you're not aligned with what they want. And there might be all the best reasons in the world why the way you want to do it is technically better. But and I'm not saying the customer's always right, because they're not always right, but we need to align with where their expectations are using the skill sets we've already talked about, like communication, sales, negotiation. It is possible to move people closer to where you want, but it's a give and take. And if you are someone who is offended every time somebody gives you some feedback, another place Toastmasters could help, because in Toastmasters it's not just about speaking, it's also giving feedback and receiving feedback, knowing how to do that tactfully. I'd recommend this book, which is called Thanks for the Feedback, The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well by Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen. This is a very good book, both about taking feedback and receiving feedback. What I always tell people on my team is, for every feedback you get, be it your annual review, be it a feedback from a demo, be it a project customer satisfaction rating, look for the nugget of truth in there. It could be 90, 80, 60% out of line or perception that's not accurate, but it is a perception. So to that person, that's real. And being able to take that feedback and then incorporate that, learn and grow. And that's the important thing in getting better. If you can take feedback, including constructive, non-constructive, negative feedback, and learn and grow from it, that will make you much more effective in your current role and something that will help you move to where you want to be. And the fifth item is personal habits and discipline. If you can't manage yourself, you can't manage other people effectively. If you don't get good sleep, if you don't get good nutrition, that's where effective personal habits, and it's the day in, day out, not the big things, but the little things that add up. That's why I love James Clear's Atomic Habits, because it makes the point how habits are not the big steps, they're the little steps. He tells a great story about two planes leaving from Los Angeles, and they're facing inches apart. By the time they get to the East Coast, they're 700 miles apart. And so it's each day doing things 1% better. That's things such as regularly reviewing how you're working, regularly reviewing how effective you're being in your roles, being strategic, not just responsive. These are the kind of things that is not something you can quickly do, but you can every day make decisions and make choices to be 1% better. And over time, 6, 8, 12 months, you will find you are moving in the direction you want to be. So the key takeaways here are, yes, it's important to know how the technology works. Yes, it's important to be awesome at it, but that's not going to be enough if you want to move ahead. But rather, by making these small changes and working on these things, like your communication, like being able to negotiate, being able to persuade people in communication, your good personal habits, those are the kind of things that day in, day out will help you move in the direction in which you want to go. So Mr. Pinkletoes, I don't know if you'll see this video. I don't know who you are, but your question was great. And if you have any questions for us, please either leave them in the comments or send us an email at powerplatformanswers@hitachisolutions.com. We look forward to your questions, and we'll see you next week.